All right, witnesses, if you would like to be seated, we will get underway here. We've got votes coming up, so I'd like to be able to get as much in as we can. So, Mr. Norcross, we're going to get underway. I want to welcome everybody to the Tactical Air and Land Subcommittee hearing today. This is convened to hear about fiscal year 2025 budget requests from the Department of Defense's Fixed Wing Tactical and Training Aircraft programs. I want to thank our witnesses for being here today. I am going to focus on the National Defense Strategy, the things that we need to do to accomplish that. Our effort today is to be able to make sure that we get to your questions. I know everybody here has an opening statement. We ask that you stay strictly to the 3 minutes. We have votes coming up, which means right around 4 o'clock we're going to be called out, maybe a little bit later. So what I want to do is I'm going to put my comments in the record, and I am now going to recognize Ranking Member Mr. Norcross.
Thank you, Chairman, and for all the witnesses for showing up today. I again will echo the statements of the Chairman. I'll put my formal remarks in. I just want to touch base on a number of issues that are coming up, and hopefully we can squeeze those in the appropriate amount of time. But the one thing I do want to mention when it comes to capacity is important, but capabilities is the driver for what we deal with each and every day. And that statement will become more relevant as we get into the question and answer. With that, I yield back.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Norcross. I ask unanimous consent that the chairman and the ranking member be allowed to enter their opening remarks in the record. Hearing no objections, so ordered. We will now go to our witnesses, and we'll allow the witness panel to begin in whatever order you all have pre-selected. The first one up, please give your comments. We ask that you stick to the 3-minute clock, and we will keep time. It should be there in front of you as we start the clock.
Well, thank you, Chairman Whitman and Ranking Member Norcross, and thanks for having us here today to provide testimony on Department of Air Force's fiscal year 25 President's budget request for fixed-wing tactical and training aircraft programs. As we testified last year, our operational imperatives work highlighted the challenges of integration and the importance of tight partnerships between the operational and acquisition communities and developing the necessary capabilities to deter and win future conflicts. We look forward to working with Congress as we organize into a more agile and integrated acquisition system that delivers capabilities quickly and at scale for great power competition, and ask your support for our budget request, including funding included for operational imperative initiatives. We remain steadfast in resourcing these priorities, as well as others such as nuclear modernization, but our resources have been limited by the 2023 Fiscal Responsibility Act. The impacts of the FRA, combined with the delays of funding through continuing resolutions and restrictions on the retirements of weapons systems that do not meet our needs under the National Defense Strategy, divert focus from our military's ability to deliver decisive combat at risk. Nothing could be more imperative than our need to receive timely authorization and appropriation of our fiscal year 25 budget request. This budget request continues our modernization efforts, such as the development of collaborative combat aircraft, next generation air dominance platform, the advanced battle management system, our T-7 training aircraft, the E-7, and munitions. It also allows us to continue fielding platforms like the F-15EX, the F-15 EPAWS, F-22 upgrades, and F-35 Block 4. As well as sustaining our current fleet. I particularly want to highlight the CCA program as the exemplar of our efforts to develop and field new capabilities rapidly, affordability, and at scale. The CCA program is working to complete CCA Increment 1 concept refinement efforts and will notify Congress as we move forward with the vendors who will complete detailed designs, build prototypes, and test production representative test articles. In fiscal year 25, we'll begin concept refinement for the next CCA increment, as we also continue to explore international partnership participation. Since time is of the essence in capability development, we're thankful to Congress for providing quick start authority through Section 229 of the fiscal year NDAA. Secretary Kendall highlighted a program just approved through Quick Start, which will initiate work on providing C-3 battle management for moving target indication at scale. This effort is an element of the operational imperatives funding request in fiscal year 25, and the Quick Start Authority allows us to begin some of that work now. Thank you again for the opportunity to testify. We look forward to working with you in Congress, the committee, industry, and the communities that support us to defend the nation.
Thank you, Mr. Hunter. And now go to Lieutenant General Moore.
Thank you, Chairman Whitman, Ranking Member Norcross, and other distinguished members of the subcommittee for the opportunity to testify today on behalf of the Department of the Air Force, and thank you for your continued leadership and your unwavering support of the U.S. military. Today we are, as you know, in the midst of a difficult transition from a legacy force to one built to deter Chinese aggression and win against any peer competitor. Fiscal year 25 represents another opportunity for the Department of the Air Force and the Congress to work together to remain the world's preeminent power projection force. We cannot afford to stop short of achieving the force our nation needs. Our most valuable resources, manpower, money, and time, remain limited. We must be disciplined in our decisions and focus our investments on what we need most. We do not want to get rid of aging airplanes, but in order to invest in modernized capabilities while maintaining the ability to keep our airmen ready, we must pivot both our resources and our airmen to the future. We have to stop funding things that do not measurably bring us closer to that goal. Continuing to maintain our current force structure while simultaneously pursuing modernization is creating a drain on our resources, and those resources include our airmen and their readiness. The Air Force's strategy is not to divest, but rather to modernize. We must get past what is holding us back from being able to compete. In our FY25 request, the Air Force remains focused on achieving a fighter force mix that provides a capable, sustainable, survivable, and affordable force that can operate across a range of mission sets. Most notably, our FY25 request seeks to preserve our advances in modernization while shaping future investments around long-range kill chains and the elements that support them. This contribution to the joint force is central to our ability to deter and, if necessary, defeat aggression. We continue to make significant progress towards closing key capability gaps, but the hard choices are not behind us. We must consolidate the things that we need that are relevant to the future fight and make them the most relevant we can. We must remain united as a department and as a nation to successfully overcome barriers to change. Time is our most valuable asset on the path to modernization, but it is not on our side. Our adversaries are watching, and we must act now to make the difficult choices that it takes to modernize. American lives and those of our allies and partners rely on our ability to deliver air superiority. We cannot fail in this endeavor. We look forward to once again working with the Congress to shape a lethal force that efficiently and affordably provides the most capable air power for our nation. I'm honored to sit here today with Mr. Hunter and my joint teammates and look forward to answering your questions.
Lieutenant General Moore, thank you. Mr. Garrett, you're now recognized.
Come on. Oh, I think that's working now. Chairman Whitman, Ranking Member Norcross, and distinguished members of the committee, thank you for the opportunity to appear before you today and for Congress's support as we discuss Department of Navy's tactical aviation and munitions programs. The FY25 budget request supports national security by providing for the procurement of 53 fixed-wing aircraft for the Department of Navy, which includes 13 F-35Bs, 13 F-35Cs, and 27 multi-engine training aircraft. This budget also supports the start of the MQ-25 low-rate initial production and procures 3 MQ-25 Stingrays. The budget request continues to support the modernization and sustainment of legacy and fourth-generation multi-mission aircraft. In March, 17 F/A-18 ENF Block 3 production aircraft were placed on contract with Boeing. This contract also acquired technical data necessary for operational readiness and post-production sustainment. In addition, this budget supports lifecycle modernization initiatives and capability upgrades that enhance our inventory while maintaining tactical relevance. We continue to focus on stabilizing and strengthening the industrial base and managing supply chains. We seek to invest $227 million to increase production capacity and strengthen suppliers. The Navy continues to take full advantage of authorities granted by Congress in FY23 NDAA that provide streamlined multi-year procurement processes for tactical munitions. Not only has this authority allowed the Department to replenish munition stockpiles, which have been used in support of conflicts in the Ukraine, Israel, and the Red Sea, it stabilizes the demand signal to industrial base, resulting in an increased capacity to develop, upgrade, produce, and field munitions at scale. The FY25 budget continues to strategically shift the focus to fifth-generation fighter production with the acquisition of 175 F-35s across the FIDIP. As the Service Acquisition Executive for Joint Strike Fighter Program, I work closely with U.S. Services, OSD, and the Joint Program Office and industry partners to continue reducing program costs and ensure a sustainment strategy is implemented that meets the needs of the fleet and the entire F-35 enterprise. The FY25 budget submission continues to invest in our Air Wing of the future to include next-generation air dominance and collaborative combat aircraft, which allow the Navy and Marine Corps to achieve service goals for investment in the future force and to maintain a competitive edge. Overall, this budget represents the deliberate and informed development of a modernized, integrated, all-domain naval force for the fight today, tomorrow, and in the future. A fight that requires us to be agile, think differently, and prioritize wisely to meet an ever-changing and complex security environment. Thank you once again for the opportunity to be here before your subcommittee today, and I look forward to your questions.
Thank you, Mr. Garrison. Rear Admiral Donnelly.
Chairman Whitman, Ranking Member Norcross, and distinguished members of the subcommittee, thank you for the opportunity to appear here today. Naval Aviation appreciates the committee's support with recent procurement of new strike fighters and weapons and NDAA language that improves the ability to more effectively get at the capabilities and the capacities that we need for these systems and programs. The criticality of our work is on display in the Red Sea with operations of Carrier Air Wing 3 and Eisenhower Strike Group to maintain global sea control and access in support of our national interests and open access to vital sea routes. Concurrently, the Western Pacific deployment of Theodore Roosevelt and permanently forward deployed posture of Ronald Reagan strike groups demonstrates the deterrence value of unambiguous, credible forward presence and underscore our requirement to maintain an even more intense focus on sharpening naval aviation's role and the critical capabilities of our carrier strike groups in joint warfighting integration as fundamental to providing combatant commanders options and what we will be required to fight and win decisively in any high-end fight. Navy maintains our focused vision on Air Wing of the future, while higher DON budgetary priorities, deferred procurement of F-35C, Navy is continuing and committed to the F-35C Carrier Air Wing Transition Plan. Successful F-35 Carrier Strike Group deployments with VFA 147, VFA 94, and the Marine Corps' VMFA 314 inform Navy's process of learning in order to better qualify costs, mission-capable rates, and operations of the F-35. Future platforms of Air Wing of the future will further improve persistence and increase operational reach and capacity through the combination of its sixth-generation platform, FAXX, advanced long-range weapons, and unmanned tactical platforms that support carrier wing ability to pace the most stressing threats through the 2030s and beyond, keeping nuclear-powered aircraft carriers as the most viable option for deterrence and crisis response around the globe. We continue to develop methods of achieving high-end training through live virtual constructive training and via joint simulation environment and our integrated training facilities that enable air crews to conduct joint and naval integrated end-to-end enhanced mission training in simulated environments, mitigating the requirement to continually expand our live training ranges. In addition to aviation platforms, PB25 weapons procurement plan is focused on inventory objectives of priority and critical munitions through multi-year procurement and large lot production contract awards for maximized rate and reduced all-up-around costs. Navy thanks Congress and this subcommittee for your continued support of important aviation priorities, including our flight hour program, critical aircraft upgrades, and investment in future capabilities, and I look forward to answering your questions.
Rear Admiral Donnelly, thank you. We'll now go to Lieutenant General Gearing.
Chairman Whitman, Ranking Member Norcross, distinguished members, thank you for the opportunity to appear before you to report the state of marine aviation. Your support has been critical in our ability to maintain a warfighting edge in the face of a rapidly changing global landscape and emerging challenges. As directed by the Commandant, we are balancing the sustainment and upgrades of current capabilities to meet our enduring crisis response requirements while executing deliberate force modernization across all functions of marine aviation. I want to thank Congress and this subcommittee for your continued support in funding our critical sustainment accounts, which enable marine aviation to generate the capabilities and warfighting readiness required to meet our global crisis response mandate. This support enabled our newest F-35B squadron, Marine Fighter Attack Squadron 542, to deploy to the High North as part of Exercise Nordic Response, where they executed sustained operations with allies and partners and achieved 100% sortie completion rate. The Marine Corps F-35 program of record remains 420 aircraft, and we are continuing to transition to an all-fifth-generation TAC Air Force. Your Corps currently has 8 operational F-35 squadrons ready to respond to crisis worldwide, and we will hit the halfway point in our transition to 18 active component squadrons by the end of this calendar year. We are working closely with the Joint Program Office and other services to ensure vital weapons capabilities are delivered to the fleet on an acceptable timeline and without unacceptable cost growth. We appreciate the continued congressional oversight and support on TR-3 and Block 4 modernization. We are aligned with the Air Force and the Navy in prioritizing the engine core upgrade and power and thermal management systems upgrade to meet future capability enhancements and reduce future sustainment costs. As we look for continued opportunities to enhance our current fifth-generation capabilities, Marine Aviation will execute a deliberate modernization effort we call Project Eagle. Project Eagle is Marine Aviation's fully informed modernization strategy spanning 3 future year defense program cycles out to the year 2040. One such effort includes accelerating the prototyping and experimentation of TAC Air collaborative combat aircraft and building a common interoperable control architecture for integrating with joint assets. The Marine Corps has taken the lead on integrating and testing the XQ-58 as a pathway toward a broader series of CCA capabilities in the future. To date, the Marine Corps has completed 2 successful XQ-58 flights, and we are planning 3 additional flights this fiscal year. In closing, central to Marine Aviation are your Marines, the men and women of Marine Aviation, the driving force behind our continued excellence. Their unwavering commitment, coupled with a penchant for innovation, ensures Marine Aviation remains agile, lethal, naval at its core, and contributes directly to deterring our adversaries. Thank you once again. I look forward to your questions.
Lieutenant General Gehring, thank you. Lieutenant General Schmidt, you're now recognized.
Chairman Whitman, Ranking Member Norcross, and distinguished members of the subcommittee, thank you for the opportunity to provide an F-35 program update. In December, I testified before this subcommittee on topics spanning F-35 development, production, and sustainment. The subcommittee highlighted priorities including engine modernization, test infrastructure enhancements, digital engineering initiatives, infrastructure enhancements, digital engineering initiatives, supply chain maturity, future sustainment strategy, Tech Refresh 3 resolution, and Block 4 delivery. As you know, development and production concurrency is Block 4's most critical challenge, and we are dealing with its consequences today. Since my last testimony, the F-35 Joint Program Office has maintained an unequivocal focus on these efforts as we work to make congressional and warfighter expectations a reality. I look forward to offering updates regarding progress across these fronts and to sharing details on the work that remains. Amid these efforts, the Department of Defense's official declaration of Milestone C and formal full-rate production decision in March 2024 gives credence to the acquisition maturity taking place within the F-35 enterprise. For over 20 years, F-35 stakeholders have laid the groundwork for a fifth-generation air system that is operating around the world today and planned for employment by U.S. and international users for decades to come. With this milestone behind us, we enter a new chapter as we make an unrelenting push to modernize this platform for the future and drive sustainment excellence throughout the fleet. TR-3, a reimagined Block 4, propulsion modernization, and upgrades that will follow depend on the work we must execute today. The F-35 program represents professional acquisition at its highest level, and I'm tremendously proud of the team working to bring these objectives to life. As this subcommittee knows, the efforts that got us here will not be sufficient to get us where we are going. Success will continue to require the best personnel, software practices, facilities, supply chains, and industrial partnerships our U.S. and international teammates can offer. I have no doubt we will continue to face and overcome complex challenges, and I assure you the F-35 Joint Program Office team remains up for the challenge. Thank you.
Lieutenant General Schmidt, thank you so much. Dr. Schmidt, you're next.
Chairman Whitman, Ranking Member Norcross, distinguished members of the subcommittee, it's an honor to be here today to provide a summary of the results and recommendations on tactical fighter aircraft and related programs that are under my oversight. I'd like to focus my opening comments on 3 areas: the combined report on the F-35 Integrated Operational Test and Evaluation, or IOT&E, and live fire test and evaluation, LFT&E, key findings across other programs, and the operational test infrastructure needed to support testing of current and emerging tactical weapon systems. DOT&E released its combined F-35 IOT&E and LFT&E report in February of 2024, and in March, DOT&E staff briefed these results to this subcommittee. My staff is available to provide follow-on briefings at your convenience. Next, I'll move on to key findings of other tactical fighter aircraft and tactical fighter aircraft-related programs. The first is the F-15 Eagle Passive Active Warning and Survivability System, or EPAWS. The current electronic warfare test infrastructure significantly limited the breadth of DOT&E's assessment of EPAWS effectiveness during its recent IOT&E. This limitation affects all spectrum warfare systems, especially electromagnetic attack systems like EPAWS and the EA-18 Growler Next-Gen Jammer. DoD's open and closed hardware-in-the-loop laboratories and military test ranges need upgrades to address these and other limitations. The next key finding comes from the F-22 and F-35 programs. These programs have ongoing test instrumentation challenges that center around the integration of the open-air battle shaping, or OABS. OABS was utilized in F-22, F-35, and F-15EX operational testing. It enables high-fidelity live testing with real-time kill removal and data collection. It's already installed in several CONUS ranges and continues to expand. Multiple Air Force, Navy, and Marine Corps aircraft are already equipped with OABS, which requires frequent upgrades to keep up with the platform and weapon program upgrade processes. High-fidelity data collected by the OAB system is essential to the verification, validation, and accreditation of modeling and simulation on different platforms and they're integrated into and continuously upgraded in the Joint Simulation Environment, or JSE. As findings from these tests show, the operational test infrastructure needed to support modern testing continues to be a challenge. The JSE is a high-fidelity battle space environment, and it's currently integrated with the F-35-in-a-box software, blue and red cockpits, and advanced surface and air threats that were required to support F-35 IOT&E. The JSE is rapidly expanding to support multiple platform test and evaluation, tactics development, and high-end training for aircraft, such as the F-22 and F-18. In addition to the JSE, there's also other needs we have for stakeholders, which include support for digital class of threat emulators that are also integrated with the OABS for realistic real-time integration with threats. It's important that we get these systems and other systems into critical platforms like the F-22 and F-35, and we will be partnering with the Test Resource Management Center in order to do this. Thank you for your attention and for your continuous support of our servicemen and women, and I look forward to your questions.
Dr. Schmidt, thank you. We're going to go to our committee members now to begin the questioning. Mr. Bacon?
Thank you.
Next.
Thank you, gentlemen, for being here. We appreciate your leadership. I submit to you that we don't have a large enough top line for this year. It's a 1% growth in spending underneath inflation, and because of that, you're forced to make some, I would say, some bad choices. So just look at some of the numbers. In 2024, we're going to bring in, okay, and this is really more to General Moore for the Air Force, but I think it's true for all the services to some degree. We're going to put in 60 new aircraft, but we're going to get rid of 190. So that's 130 subtractions there of fighter aircraft. And over the next 5 years, we're going to bring in 351 fighters and get rid of 594. That's going to be a loss of 243 fighters. So that's almost like 10 fighter squadrons equivalent. I know in 2019, we said we needed 7 more fighter squadrons, and now we're budgeting a loss of about 10 more. We're going backwards. So my question may be to General Moore, and the backdrop is we're spending about 3.1% of our GDP on defense. It used to be around 4%. So I think we're at a historical, not the historical low, but near the historical low for spending. So would it be true, General Moore, to say that the top line is forcing us to make some bad decisions? That if we had a higher top line, we'd be producing more fighters or getting rid of less?
So I would say that in order to comply with the Fiscal Responsibility Act, we did make choices that you can see very clearly in our budget.
Are we going the right way to address a near-peer competitor fight?
So I think the capabilities that a near competitor brings require aggressive modernization, and the question is, how do you get there? Do you aggressively modernize by shedding old capability? Do you aggressively modernize by a higher top line, or do you aggressively modernize by taking money out of readiness? There aren't really many other choices.
But with a higher top line, we could produce more F-35s?
We intended to buy 6 F-35s this year, as well as 6 F-15EXs. You can see those in last year's FYDP, but they're not still in the budget year.
Okay. I'm just concerned that we're going to be 17 fighter squadrons short for what we need, and we're not going the right direction. I'm not blaming this team, because I think it's a result of decisions made by Congress and the President, but I think we're not going the right way to meet China, and with that, I'll yield.
Thank you, Mr. Bacon. I think those are all very salient points as far as where we're going with scale. Listen, we understand the need to modernize. The key is we always go through these transitions where we get rid of existing platforms regardless of their limitations and capabilities and things that they can and cannot do for the promise of new capabilities somewhere out in the future. And I tell folks, all of our dreams come through outside the fight up. So you have this giant gap, and all of a sudden you figure, well, we're going to save money to get there. The problem is your leaders that follow on say, well, wait a minute, we're going to use this money for other purposes. So it always is a disconnect there. We have got to find a way to get those curves to intersect as far as retiring older capability, bringing online newer capability. It always seems like there's a bathtub there we have to swim in for years. So, all right, with that, Mr. Courtney, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you to all the witnesses for your conciseness and efficiency in your remarks, which were also very full of content. Lieutenant General Schmidt, last December you mentioned, you testified here, and at that time you discussed that 80 kilowatts of cooling capacity is the objective requirement for the Joint Program Office as part of the Engine and Power Thermal Management Modernization Program. Was the requirement. Is that objective requirement of 80 kilowatts still the margin that you need for future requirements?
Yes, sir. The requirement is actually the window is 62 to 80, but the threshold is 62 and 80 is the objective.
And what is the acquisition strategy for a new power thermal management system, and what do you estimate is the timeline to deliver to the fleet?
So, sir, we are just getting started on the power and thermal management piece of that because it was an FY24 new start. So we will, I will be able to fully answer, I think, that question next year. With that initial 24 new start and getting Lockheed to fully characterize the airplane and what all of the boundary conditions are for a power and thermal management system will be better defined. As far as the engine core upgrade program, which we really embarked on to get the life back into the engine, that is proceeding nominally, and I am looking forward to this year to really inform the 62 to 80 requirement. Another important requirement is the retrofitability of this. So that is a requirement from all of our customers that we can affordably retrofit the airplanes that we have out there, and that is all playing into the design considerations.
So the budget request regarding engine core upgrade was $527 million. I mean, you're confident that's the right number in terms of just, how the process is moving at this point?
Sir, I am confident in that number today. So we have a requirement from Congress, and I actually appreciate it, to come back and make the engine modernization program a separate sub-program managed separately. We will, again, the engine core upgrade program is kind of going through its risk reduction phase. Power and thermal management work is just getting going. We are going back to the department, and we will lay all this out for Dr. LaPlante, the DAE, as well as the service acquisition executives as we create that sub-program. And we will have to do an independent cost estimate on that. But for right now, sir, I'm confident in the funding that is in the budget. Yes, sir.
Great, thank you. General Gehring, the Marine Corps' FY25 unfunded priority list contains a request of $97 million for additional F-35C engine spares and power modules. Can you discuss how important the spares are to the F-35 program and how prioritizing depot outputs sustains flight operations for the aircraft?
Sir, thanks for that question. Yeah, what we've experienced since purchasing sovereign spares is really what it does for our readiness, not only our home-based readiness, but also when we deploy. It gives us the ability to put spares on ships as we deploy, and it's just more timely. So we've really benefited quite a bit from that, sir, and we continue your support on that in the future.
Great, and as you're sort of ramping up in the Indo-Pacific region, I would imagine that tyranny of distance makes that even more useful.
Yes, sir. Tyranny of time, distance, logistics only gets harder in the Indo-PACOM, sir.
Great, thank you. I yield back.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Courtney. We'll now go to Dr. McCormick.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll get right to the point because I know we have limited time and we have votes coming up. Rear Admiral Donnelly, I recently was on a plane trip and I was watching a documentary for about the 5th time. You probably heard of it, called Top Gun Maverick. I had some concerns because I am from the 1986 graduation class. So I am the Top Gun class. And I don't understand why a guy named Tom Cruise gets a cat trap ride and I don't. I have significant concerns. Is that because of the discrimination, because my wings move when I fly, or some other reason?
I appreciate your question, sir, and I look forward to rectifying that issue as quickly as possible.
Outstanding answer. You have my full support in whatever you want. With that said, shifting gears a little bit, Lieutenant General Schmidt, I know recently there was testimony on Congress that there was lab testing that has greatly benefited our models looking into the future. And I know we've done this with the Osprey, where we've avoided a lot of problems. But of course, now we're having some hard problems facing us. But as we look forward, is the software test capability limiting factor in the delivery weapons systems capabilities as far as that bottleneck of what we're seeing kind of slow down the process? How do we widen that bottleneck to progress to where we need to be to continue to force through our innovations and our advancements?
Sir, thank you for the question. So absolutely, that bottleneck is restricting our ability to deliver everything we want in this program. In fact, we are considering truncating the current 40 PO1, the current software for the TR3 deliveries, so that we can get after the next version of software to deliver the full combat capability, and they're competing with each other in the labs. And there's many other reasons that we are trying to do that as well. But that is a challenge for us, the lab capacity. At the same time, we had a great software architecture and independent review team come in, and they laid out a number of long-term priorities as well as short-term priorities in terms of our digital infrastructure, model sharing, and things like that. I am excited. We are rallying with our industry teams to prioritize those things. In fact, they did that just last week, and we will be pushing forward. Some of those I think we can invest within the program. Others we'll have to discuss whether industry pays for them or the government outside the program. But thank you for the question. Yes, that is a challenge, sir.
Absolutely. And then a related question, I don't know if this would be for the Honorable Mr. Hunter or not, but do we feel like we have the right competition? This kind of relates to what you're taking, these models that are competing with each other for the next advancements. Obviously, we're always short on money. We want to have a competition that drives down the price range and at the same time increases the quality. Do you think that's a working, functional model right now, or do you think that there's something that's hamstringing us in our advancements in that category?
I think we've proven that we can do it and that it can work, and we've also proven that we can do it affordably, but it obviously ties in a bit to the nature of the capability that you're trying to acquire. So with a collaborative combat aircraft, I would point to where we have a number of vendors currently working, early stage design work, which we're able to afford having multiple doing that work. And then as we progress to more concrete, build and the more expensive activities, that does neck down, but we get very robust competition early on. Which allows us to choose our vendors based on their actual demonstrated capability, not just a paper product or advertisement. And that's core to our strategy of beginning CCA Increment 2 is for those who do not get selected to continue on Increment 1, they can continue to work towards bettering the capabilities for future program offerings.
Good. I hope that continues to be a competitive process. I know there's always these legacy programs, and sometimes we get stuck in these funnels of money, which kind of give us less opportunities, less competition, which of course costs us more money and more problems in the future as we progress. Specifically, I don't know if this would be for General Schmidt or somebody else, but what lessons learned are you documenting from the Power Thermal Management System, the PTMS, and the engine issues on the F-35 that will inform our future and development?
It's a great question, sir. I think the biggest lesson learned is develop whatever products you have that meets the spec in the first place. And in this case, we had an engine that didn't meet the specs. Now, at the same time, the engine had already been designed as the aircraft was being built. So I'm not trying to point fingers here. It's just that is a challenge. As the requirements grew on the airplane, the engine was already designed. And so yeah, it ate into the life of the engine and all that kind of stuff. I think there's some really innovative things going on in terms of the engine core upgrade. which will allow us to get the life back into this engine without changing our complete supply, support, infrastructure, and make it as common as possible. But ultimately, if the specs aren't matching in the first place, the integrated design documents don't match each other, then you're probably going to have a problem.
Excellent point for future planning for our future development and R&D. And I will say, gentlemen, again, I want to reinforce that Admiral Donnelly gave the best answer for today. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. McCormick. Appreciate it. Mr. Carvajal, you're now recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think we have a record number of witnesses today, more than some subcommittee members, so thank you for being here. General Schmidt, it is well known that the F-35 program has had significant overrun costs in its schedule. This has been a big bill for the taxpayers to pick up. Certainly, we've gained great capabilities with the F-35, but quite frankly, it's been an embarrassment when it comes to the price tag that's crept up significantly. I hope throughout the life of this program, the department has learned lessons to lower costs for future programs like Next Generation Air Dominance. Do you think the department has learned lessons to apply to future programs? What is the department actively doing to drive down costs for future programs?
Sure, that's to me specifically on F-35. So as far as development goes, I would say we concurrency is our biggest challenge, and we bought into a rapid, agile acquisition process to deliver software, and really we are delivering a lot of very hard to develop hardware as we integrate this, and integrating that hardware has been our biggest challenge. And I think the failure of our teams to recognize the complexity of some of the things that we bought into in that schedule is part of that. And undoing that concurrency is a really important part of that, and I could talk to you a lot about reimagining Block 4, but I don't want to take up all the time, but I'm sure we will get to that eventually here. In terms of costs, I do want to, so development costs, we certainly have gone in the wrong direction here in terms of delivering Block 4. In sustainment and in our operating costs, I am very proud of the team. We have significantly reduced our cost per tail per year, significantly reduced our cost per flying hour. We have an active war on costs going on in the program. Just in the last year, in sustainment costs, again, through the life of the program, we have taken out $13 billion in cost in the program. Our last cost estimate in current year dollars, so factoring out inflation, is $45 billion less over the life of the program than the year before. So I'm totally with you, sir, on development costs, and we got to get better at cost estimating and laying out our schedules, but I think we're making some progress on the sustainment side.
Great, thank you very much. I do hope that's codified so that in the future we do have those learned lessons to apply in the development side of this. The Air Force goal is to have a tactical fighter fleet that provides the capability, capacity, and affordability to meet air superiority and the global strike needs by 2035, 2040 timeframe. General Gehring, General Donnelly, and General Moore, do you think this timeline is adequate for our national security? And do you think we will have capability gaps between now and then? Don't all jump in at once, please.
Sir, I think that if we want to ensure that we're able to confront a peer adversary, we are seeing capability gaps developing long before the time frame that you mentioned. And so I think if we want to make sure that doesn't happen, we have to aggressively modernize. I mentioned before there are basically 3 ways to do that. You can modernize at the expense of readiness, you can modernize with a higher top line, or you can modernize at the expense of the other foundational things that need to occur. So I think we can look into the future and see that if we want to remain relevant into the early to mid-30s, we have a challenge now and it requires aggressive action.
Great. General Donnelly or General Moore?
Thank you, sir. I think CNO Franchetti has been very clear in the decade of concern has come upon us, and Navy is very focused on current capability and program wholeness. And we see that in our service life modifications of our current F-18 fleet, bringing them to a Block 3 capability, as well as the procurement of those new aircraft that are arriving to our flight lines, and also as we have our air wing transition ongoing. So we recognize in the role that we have to play in global presence today, we have to be ready for the fight tonight in any circumstances, whether it is what we have ongoing right now in the Red Sea and the role that we're playing over there, or against a high-end adversary. So we recognize the point that you've made. Yes, sir.
Thank you. I'm pretty much out of time, Mr. Chair. I yield back.
Thank you, Mr. Carbajal. We're now going to go to Ms. Norcross. Yep.
Thank you, Chairman, and thank all the witnesses, which you officially do outnumber us up here. So, obviously, we're dealing with a number of issues, and when we talk about some of the priorities, F-35, largest program ever in history, DOD. So when we talk about delivering the TR-3 aircraft, let me start by asking, there is a pause on delivery. General Schmidt, how many aircraft are parked on the tarmac somewhere in this world, waiting delivery to us?
Sir, can I just say a significant number? I'd rather not advertise that to all of our adversaries, but a significant number, sir.
And I think that's agreed upon both Lockheed Martin and all the people sitting here today. And when we look at those, we have been in this meeting going back year after year talking about this, and each time we're kicking the can down the road. It's always something new. You need to understand the frustration. I know Chairman feels this strongly, and he'll speak about it, but the date for the delivery of TR-3, how confident are you that it actually will meet that modified date that we have now?
Sir, as I said in my last testimony, I am as frustrated as you that I can't nail down a specific date and be extremely clear about exactly when we will deliver. That said, the best chance we have to get to a truncated, so a couple of combat capabilities won't be in there. The first realistic chance is July of this summer, and that would basically be the current version of software, or maybe with a little tweaks, because it takes a while to get through airworthiness and all that. July. The software architecture independent review team that just finished, they estimated more like August or September of this year. There's some awfully smart guys on that team, and we could talk a lot about all the things that they found. But the frustration that you have, that I have, with our lack of ability to say exactly where we are, is driven by hardware immaturity that we're doing a lot of software workarounds to deliver as efficiently as possible, and that's not a long-term winning solution. And I think this all goes back to the concurrency of us saying, you know what, no matter what, this hardware needs to be in this lot. And yes, I understand why we make those decisions. At the same time, putting our national asset production lines at risk for a development program, there are other options to deal with concurrency, and we need to do a better job of that. And when we reimagine Block 4, we are going to change that model for sure.
Thank you. You talked about Block 4 and lessons that we have learned. What else can we do to, I'll use the term, enforce, cajole, plea, to get these in at a time that's relevant to us? There are a number of target dates that we've heard that potentially could be an issue in the South Pacific, but regardless of those, 27, 28, 29, now more than ever, what can we do differently? Authorities, a piece of legislation in the NDAA, what can we do to collectively push our foot down a little harder to make sure we get these in a time that's relevant to us?
Sir, last year you invested in additional flight sciences jets for this program. That was very, very important. We all should have done that years ago, and that's not going to help us out next year. It will help us out in a few years from now. Similarly, in the situation we're in, as our discussion about LAV investments, I also, my frustration over our lack of digital infrastructure and whether that's our industry, because it is our industry, not making the investments they need to make. And of course, the government has a role in that to some degree. But if we're going to be the most advanced, out front, biggest airplane fighter program in the world, we should have a digital infrastructure that looks like we're the biggest fighter program in the world. And we don't have that now, sir. And whether you want to hold me to that or industry, we both are accountable for that, and we need to have that infrastructure out there.
So I'll just wrap up. Pointing fingers, we've been doing that. And this isn't to beat up on the contractor per se. Obviously, we all have skin in the game. But the idea of the F-35 is a remarkable aircraft by any measurement. But who we're going to be fighting against potentially have even more remarkable. So we can say, hey, we got a great one, but if we can't beat it, it becomes irrelevant. I know I'll have more questions, but let me toss it back over to Chairman. I yield back.
Thank you, Mr. Norcross. Gentlemen, we have 7 votes on the House floor right now. The first vote has come to time. We still have time to get down and vote. So I would ask, if you would, to stay here with us. We're probably going to be 45 minutes to 55 minutes in votes. So if you could stay with us, we'd like to come back and continue the line of questioning if that suffices with your schedule. Unfortunately, these vote series are somewhat unpredictable for us, so we would be very honored if you would stay with us while we have a chance to go vote. With that, we will recess until after votes. Thank you. Thanks so much for your patience. We had votes, and then we have a number of families here today that came on behalf of the Select Committee on China because their loved ones were victims of fentanyl poisoning. The epidemic in this nation is unforgivable, and the single largest producer of fentanyl, fentanyl precursors, and fentanyl derivatives is the Chinese Communist Party. You know, we talk a lot about bombs and bullets. Their frontal attack every day is on people that are faced with these poisonings, and it's tragic. So anyway, so we were out there with the families, so my apologies about being late, but we're back, and we appreciate your indulgence and being patient with us, and we will get back underway. So Don, I'll let you pick up your questioning, and we'll go from there.
Thank you, Chairman. Certainly, again, for sticking in there with us, we really appreciate it. When we start talking about capabilities, capacities, and the statement that I alluded to during my opening remarks, capacity is important like capabilities. Mr. Bacon talked about the retirement issue across the board. And when we look at those, the numbers are significant. The replacement numbers. So as a first question, when we start looking at what a CCA is going to be, how are we going to compare when CCAs enter operation when we start talking about airframes? General Moore, can you give us some light on where we might be going, a CCA versus a manned platform?
So I think we would probably be ill-advised to compare CCAs to manned platforms. CCAs are intended to be something different. They're intended to be able to augment what manned platforms are able to do, but not to replace them. So I don't know that we would want to draw necessarily a direct correlation between the number of tails or the number of nose wheels or whatever it is that you would like to count. I think there is an issue of capability. There's also an issue of capacity, and I think what we would like to look at is what capacity are CCAs able to add to a package that we would send forward, and how does it impact the average cost per tail of that package in order to deliver effects? So I'm not trying to duck the question. I'm not trying to use a bunch of words to get out from under it, but the fact of the matter is, I don't know that there is a direct correlation, and I don't think we should draw one. I think we should look at combat power, and I think that's how we ought to make that comparison.
If I could, Congressman, one of the insights from our operational imperative work that I referenced in my opening is the complexity of the mission threads that we have to execute in a high-intensity peer conflict. And they are complex enough that no individual platform can succeed without the contributions of the other platforms and the networks that support them all. And therefore, again, in addition to what General Moore said about it's being hard to compare CCA to a manned fighter platform, in terms of delivering the capability that you care about, success in our missions, the individual platforms aren't the best measure of our ability to do that.
I couldn't agree more. But that's how we're being measured in comments that we have around here, and somehow that they are the same, and they're not. It's the capabilities, but by the same token, if you lose one that has high capabilities, then you're losing a lot more than that one. But I think it's incredibly important to have that deeper conversation rather than just tails. But tails do count. And that's where I want to go to. When we start looking at some of the retirement plans, and I have been supportive generally of the plans that have come before us over the past, quite frankly, 10 years. But when I see some of the retirements this year, given some of the reports of what happened on Saturday, the F-15E and what they were able, yet they're on the list to some degree. General Moore, can you talk to us a little bit about that? And as relevant as it was on Saturday, how did they become irrelevant and retire in short order?
So it's a fair question. First of all, we don't seek to retire all of the E's, only the oldest of them. The ones that we're talking about average 33 years old. They are older, in fact, than our average fleet age, which is about 29 and a half. And 29 and a half, in our opinion, is far too old a fleet for us to consider perpetuating that cycle. The other thing is F-15Es don't operate by themselves. They operate as part of a network. It's the aircrew, it's the munitions, it's the command and control. The other thing is this weekend, I don't want to take one single thing away from happened this weekend, but there was neither a surface-to-air nor an air-to-air threat. They did not penetrate the highly contested environment. They didn't penetrate into an A2AD environment. I don't mean to take a single thing away from the great work that they did. Take that same set of things that surround the platform and transition that to China, and I think you find a very different result. And so what we're trying to do is build the capability that it takes to confront a peer adversary. Iran is not a peer adversary.
Right, if we're going, but it is the truck that's behind you that's carrying all the luggage that can
Yes,
be
sir.
fired from elsewhere. So
Yes, sir.
very much still in there, so appreciate. I'm going to switch over to the Marines a little bit. Last year, the Marine Corps talked about the outfit of the squadrons as 10 aircraft, and we went into great detail why and so on. Yet this year, it appears to reverse that decision going back to 12. General, can you share with us what analysis was last year wrong, or what came in that you were able to see this year that made you change that number?
Sir, thanks for that question. Yeah, there are really two things that informed our decision to go from 10 to 12 aircraft across all 18 active component squadrons and 2 reserve component squadrons. And it really came down to, first of all, informed by the operating environment and the anticipated threat. And then when we look at unit of employment or formation required to either counter that threat or prevail in that threat, and then couple that with sortie generation rate, how many times do you want to be able to do that each day? The number 12 makes a lot more sense when you look at the way that we employ the aircraft. So that was really informed by 2 things. The first was extensive exercising out in the fleet. I had the privilege to command 3rd Marine Aircraft Wing for 2 years. We had 5 fleet F-35 squadrons, 10 aircraft per squadron, and for 2 years we exercised them extensively. And that was one of the real big lessons learned, where if you really want to have the sortie generation rate and get the formations airborne that you need, that 10 did not necessarily work well, or you'd have to have a higher readiness rate than what we're planning for. 12 works out really well for that. The second piece was a third-party look by Johns Hopkins. They did a study, and their findings basically supported what our findings were, sir. So the plan going forward is to go from 10 to 12 aircraft across the board.
Well, I can appreciate the study, and quite frankly, at times it takes courage to say, hey, we made a mistake, we change it. Mistake's probably not the right word, but a reassessment of what you did. And the idea of looking at is something that we appreciate that conversation with. I was going to have a conversation regarding the IOT&E, but for reasons that we were informed, we're not going to be able to go there, at least in this public session. But we'll have to get with your staff later on, Dr. Schmidt, to address those questions, given
Absolutely, Ranking Member.
what happened to you. With that, yield back.
Thank you, Mr. Norcross. We'll now go to Mr. Fallon.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Chairman. You know, when I was a junior officer in the Air Force, I remember them always teaching us about not only air superiority, but air supremacy. Like, we own the skies. And then I, went off to live my life after I left and served in the state legislature for 8 years. We don't talk a lot about air superiority in the Texas legislature. So when I got here 3 years ago, I was a bit surprised that that's something that we can't guarantee any longer because of technology, because of drones and things of that nature. Then when we see what happened in Ukraine and that use, what I wanted to talk about is, in the future, how do we combat that problem? We just saw roughly 300 drones not reach their targets. Yay, that was wonderful that no civilians were killed, but at what cost? And I don't think Iran's 300 drones cost nearly as much as, and you see where I'm getting at, the attrition. If there's some non-state actor that were to do that where we couldn't hit back, I think one of the things that we'll see about Iran not doing it again is then they're going to get hit by Israel hard. But if it's a non-state actor, I'm worried about the attrition factor. And when I met with, when we met, Chairman, with like Palmer Luckey and Andrel, and they're doing things differently and cost effectively. So I wanted to just kick it to some very smart people on this panel and ask, how are we going to address that moving forward?
Well, affordable mass is definitely a core principle of our collaborative combat aircraft program. Anduril happens to be one of the vendors competing on that program along with others. And that competition, I think, is vital to the whole concept of affordability, getting the price where we need it to be able to purchase in the volume. CCAs are going after a higher end threat than the drone threat that was recently made evident. So we have to have a range of capabilities from things that can combat, $10,000 drones to $300,000 drones to $1 million drones and up to, sophisticated fighter aircraft. And it's finding that way to balance all the priorities within, I know for us in the Air Force, within the Air Force POM, that is the major challenge of going through these budget exercises. And then we get to the end and we look and we see, hey, we ended up with, fewer fighter aircraft this year than had previously planned. A lot of it is driven by those requirements that continue to manifest as we go through our POM process, and we have to adjust our plans in response. But affordable mass is definitely core part of the concept and something that we are changing the way we do acquisition to allow us to generate affordable mass capabilities in a way that our system has not been optimized for in the past.
Anyone else care to comment? Okay. Also, with the, in previous hearings, we talked about autonomous aircraft, and I think that would be invaluable if we were to have a hot war with China. And considering what's the result of the war games and the tremendous losses that we take in a very short period of time, not only in materiel, but of course in human lives as well. And the other advantage is you're not constrained by the limits of the human body in that you're just constrained by the laws of aerodynamics. And so what I wanted to ask General Moore is, can you elaborate more on the program and discuss the way ahead for autonomous air platforms?
Yes, sir. So we submitted as a part of our 24 budget request Project Venom. It was approved. It is a way of taking an F-16 and using it to explore various autonomy algorithms to find out what it is that we're able to do with autonomy. How far has it come so far, and where is it able to go from here? So we're excited about what may be able to come out of that, and we share your sentiment on the strong addition to our presence that could be made with autonomous aircraft, and we're looking at that, and we're just getting ready to put our secretary in an F-16 that has an autonomy algorithm in it so that he can see it firsthand. And this I think will be a great enhancement to manned-unmanned teaming. The next step past that is no requirement to team at all to be truly autonomous.
One thing I would just add to that is our autonomy government reference architecture, which is the technical underpinning for not just delivering an autonomous aircraft as a one-off, but continuously over time with competition from a whole range of autonomy providers, including a lot of non-traditional defense companies who have significant capabilities in autonomy that we have been challenged to access in the past because of clearances and a whole variety of other issues. So that autonomy government reference architecture allows us to unlock access to a much wider range of tech providers.
Thank you. I just hope that
our secretary chose to fly. We didn't inflict that on him.
Just we all need to have the courage to embrace innovation. We just have to, considering the changing landscape. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you all.
Mr. Fallon, thank you. Thank you. General Schmidt, I wanted to begin with you. I know we've had a lot of conversations about F-35, TR-3. It was bitterly disappointing to myself and other committee members that we had to learn of another shift to the right to Q3, not directly from the contractor, but from an earnings call that we had to read in the newspaper, which was pretty disconcerting. I know that you've had to deal with, through your tenure there, challenges in communication and back and forth about production, capability, performance of the aircraft. All those things, I think, have led us to the point where we are today. Can you give us your perspective on how you see the path forward? Because F-35 is it. We are all in on this aircraft. It has to perform. The capabilities that TR-3 brings to the table are necessary, and it has to occur at the speed of relevance. Delays there create risks for this country, create risks for the brave pilots that fly those aircraft. So can you give us your perspective on where things are today in light of delays in light of what I think is lots of shortcomings in how TR3 has been tested and developed. And listen, I'm not looking to place blame. I think everybody is part of this. And listen, Congress has to be part of this as far as not just understanding what happened, but what the solution is going forward. So I want to get your perspective on, how do you see things going forward to make sure we get back to where we need to be? And how do we, I hate to use a Navy term, but I'm going to use it, how do we have an all-hands-on-deck mentality?
Yes, sir. Thank you for the opportunity. So let me just quickly talk about production and sustainment. So production, we have national asset production lines, so in Fort Worth, in Italy, and in Japan. And we cannot interrupt those production lines because they have to keep going to make use of what we built, which is a treasure. In sustainment, we got a lot of work to do. I got a lot of team working through War on Readiness. We could talk about it for 2 hours if you want to. I am proud of what we've done. I see a light in the sustainment end of the tunnel. So when I get frustrated, like you do, sir, it is most of the time in development. And we have signed ourselves up to pipe dreams with concurrent programs and a long set of capabilities for a lot of reasons that we decided, well, I have to have it, so it'll be done in this time frame without the engineering rigor required to get those capabilities actually into the airplane and all the things that go with that. So as we reimagine Block 4, we have already implemented last year capability decision points for specific capabilities before we agree to put them into a lot. We've already made poor choices in some other parts of the program that I can't undo, but at the same time, going forward, we are going through the capability decision point process. We are taking what we've learned from the tech baseline review team, the software IRT team, and we are going to relay out Block 4 in a combat relevant time frame with, yes, a subset of capabilities of the Block 4 program, but those which give us the most bang for the buck. And honestly, sir, I'm getting tired of over-promising and under-delivering, and I need to change that narrative. All that said, just saying it's going to take longer and is not going to be satisfying, and all the things we talked about earlier with a true digital infrastructure being a state-of-the-art program for literally the biggest fighter program in the world, it would be unacceptable to be anything else, but I don't feel like that's where we are today. Right. The discussions, honestly, from industry are all we can do in the future on future programs. There is no future program that is bigger than this program, right. And so getting after the development side is the thing that bothers me the most every single day, and those are the things that we're trying to do about it, but I need some help from industry, sir.
Well, Lieutenant General Schmidt, I appreciate that, and I think things are finally starting to move in the right direction. I appreciate your assertion that we have to have the best on your team there at the Joint Program Office. I appreciate a conversation we had a few days ago to give Lockheed credit that they're saying we're going to make sure we bring subject matter experts across the enterprise, because there are other aspects of what Lockheed does that use digital twin technology, that use digital design, that use advanced methods to make sure that we develop systems at the speed of relevance, to make sure you get information quickly into comparison computer models, to make sure we make those software upgrades. Those are things that have to happen. Lockheed has made the commitment to do that. So as much as we'll criticize knowing about it in an earnings call, they have said, hey, there is going to be a marshaling of resources there to make sure that it happens. The key now is execution. Make sure that those things get done. I think the desire is there. The key is to be able to do that, and Lockheed is committed to stay in touch with members of this committee on a twice-a-month basis. We want to make sure that that happens so we stay up to date. The same, too, with your office, to make sure we understand the things that are happening. We have an obligation in this, too, to make sure we are part of the partnership on what the path is forward. I tell folks, we can talk all about the ground that we've already plowed and talk about how we got here, but the key is what are we going to do in the path forward? So I appreciate your perspective to say, hey, we have got a long ways to go and a short time to get there, and to steal the words of the immortal Jerry Reed, but I want to make sure that we are getting things done, and I appreciate your perspective to do that. I do want to ask, too, the next step forward. So as we begin to deliver these TR3 configured aircraft, are you confident as to when they are delivered as to where they will be operationally and will there be additional things that need to be done in the interim to actually get them to being combat coded. Because the thought is when they first come in, they may not be at a combat coded status. It looks like to me it may take 12, 16 months to get them from the early stages of TR3 to actually being able to fly within that combat configuration.
Yes, sir. There are certain capabilities that will not be available in the truncated version of the TR3 software, and you're probably right about the 12 to 16 month. We are looking at everything we can to try to figure out what can we move left in that, but that is an accurate assessment, sir, that for a couple of the capabilities that our warfighters feel are required to be fully combat capable, they will not be there at the truncation, sir.
Very good. So we still have even a ways to go once the TR3 software upgrade gets delivered. Dr. Schmidt, I want to go to you because the DOT&E report that we received here had quite a few aspects that had members asking a lot of questions. One of the aspects of the testing regime are the test beds. As was pointed out, they're old. They lack certain capabilities in order to be able to get information quickly from the test bed to the ground. Sometimes there are failures too, and what happens there, and you have to repeat a test over again. Again, not investing in that has shown itself here at this particular point. So I didn't know if you had any notable concerns or recommendations for the F-35 program to ensure that we have the requisite number of modernized test beds that can function, as Lieutenant General Schmidt talked about, in the digital realm, in ways that digital twin technology can be utilized and where we learn at the speed of relevance. And I do want to make sure I put out there a precursor, because I know in your confirmation hearing that Senator Warren had mentioned your connection there. I just want to make sure, for the full sake of transparency, to kind of reflect on that, because we're asking you questions now about F-35 program and Lockheed. So I just want to make sure so people understand, where your limitations are. So if you can't go someplace, that you let us know and that we're transparent about it.
Sure. Thanks, Chairman Whitman. I think I can speak to this because it's a broader issue than F-35. The need for a joint simulation environment-like capability or improving that capability is crucial.
Yes.
But it's more than just having the digital assets. We also have to make sure that those assets are calibrated appropriately based on open-air exercises and being able to feed that back in a synergistic loop where the digital environments get more representative and higher fidelity, and we're able to then be able to go back out into the open air ranges, because unless we're going to fight all of our future wars in video games, we need to be able to do something that goes back out to the actual operational systems. So there's continued need for investment in that, and it's not just F-35. There's also other platforms like F-22, where we need to make sure we have the appropriate capabilities for the things like the open air battle shaping capability there, so that they can be part of those exercises to get the accurate data for the live fire environments.
Yeah. Well, the JSC, I think, is critically important, and you mentioned that. Give us your perspective, too, on how we've seen other models of JSC happen, and that is you have the aircraft in the air, you fly it through certain rigorous exercises, you gather the data off of that aircraft, but you also want to be able to compare it to a static model to look at, what's happening there, to kind of run the data through that. So the whole idea that you have a comparable a system on the ground that exactly replicates what you're flying in the air, so you are able to learn at the speed of relevance. And those things, I think, are going to be incredibly important for the APG-85 radar, for the electrical optical multidimensional sensor kits that are going to be put on those aircraft. If you're going to integrate those and make sure that those are being put into the software of the aircraft at the speed of relevance, and you understand what the limitations are and the things you have to make and change the software, seems like to me that it's not just new test beds in the air, but it's also having a comparison component that is hardware on the ground that exactly replicates that. Give us your perspective on how you see that realm.
Sure, Chairman Whitman. A couple things come to mind. First, we have to be able to model the hardware dimensions accurately. Sometimes we can do that statically, sometimes it has to be dynamic. But there's also the software dimensions, and perhaps most importantly in a lot of these newer systems, the networked capabilities, because a lot of these systems have to work together in concert with other assets in the air. And being able to model that with sufficient fidelity is challenging, and the investment in our infrastructure is crucial in getting the right people who know how to build the models, who know how to analyze the models, who know how to interpret the results, and then feed them back into the operational part of the system is crucial.
Gotcha. Very good. Thank you. Lieutenant General Schmidt, I wanted to talk a little bit now in a different part of the airplane, and that is in the engine itself. As we know, we're faced with making sure that we get life out of the future engine, so the F-135 has its limitations. A part of that is really looking at the entire system of the aircraft, so it's looking at how do we manage the wear on the engine by the amount of heat that's in the engine, the whole concept of bleed air, but more specifically, the power thermal management system. Give us your perspective, too, on where you are and looking at that as we go down the road and making the evaluation of all those elements, because you can't discuss an engine upgrade without discussing PTMS and the other aspects of operations of the aircraft. So give us an idea about where you are in that whole discussion and your thought process with how we look at all those aspects.
So, sir, where we are is, so again, the engine core upgrade program started under a congressional ad funding a couple years ago, so definitely got a head start there, which is good. Relative to the power and thermal management system, I mean, think about when we did the business case analysis, we went out to determine how to get the life back in this engine, but we clearly identified during that time frame that we got a big problem in future of power and thermal management, which is where we got today. So as we develop the engine core upgrade, yes, I first need, when I talk about power and thermal management, what are the boundary conditions that we want to preserve in the engine core upgrade to give us, any amount of margin that can help in a future power and thermal management solution? I'm very much reliant on the OEM, Lockheed, to evaluate their airplane, and honestly, they have just been able to use study money to do that, and we do, doing some honestly really good work that I expect their first real input to us to be this fall. But that really needs to get done. And then there are definitely power and thermal management companies out there that have been working really hard on solutions. And sir, I am anxious to get all of them and get their solutions on the table, and we can truly evaluate those. I think we need to figure out exactly what the airplane can handle first.
Yeah.
But I am anxious for that, sir.
Very good. Thank you, Lieutenant General Schmidt. Mr. Hunter, Mr. Garrett, I wanted to get your perspective. And we talked a lot about F-35, but we have to look at how the threat is continuing to develop. We know that NGAD and NJAD are what we're looking at down the road. Obviously, cutting-edge technology, looking at where that takes us, both in cost and schedule. We look at where the threat is and what the proposed schedule is for that. But I wanted to get your perspective about where we are with that particular enterprise. Mr. Hunter, get your perspective, and Mr. Gettin, get the Navy's perspective on that, because what I see is somewhat of a divergence there. Was for a while, Navy saying, hey, listen, we want to learn at the same rate as the Air Force does in this next generation air defense platform. But then what we're seeing this year is the Navy going, whoa, wait a minute, we're gonna pull back and take some money out of that. So I wanted to get your perspectives on where we are with that, the importance for the future capability, and how do we, with that capability, learn in the technology developments, too, that our adversaries are putting forward. Because what we don't want is to say, well, we're doing this, and that's in a static realm, and then all of a sudden, by the time we get that aircraft ready to go, we look at it, and the countermeasures there have already made that aircraft at a much higher risk point than it would be otherwise, because we know the pace at which our adversaries are going. So give me a perspective there about where we are, and then how we're keeping in perspective what the future threat is going to be in relation to where that aircraft ends up when it goes to production.
Yes, Congressman, thanks for that question. As the name Next Generation Air Dominance Family of Systems implies, most of the technology work that we believe is necessary to ensure the ability to compete over multiple decades in future air fights is really centralized in the NGAD program. And it leverages some of these things I've talked about, these government reference architectures that are foundational to that, and foundational to our ability to share technology with the Navy and to leverage their technology, because they have many good and very advanced programs that we look to leverage in our program as well. And my understanding is that at that level, we are working very well together, and in fact, the Navy is proceeding on the key technologies that we believe we would like to leverage in our approach to the NGAD family of systems. And we are obviously at a point with our FY25 budget request of looking to move NGAD to the next stage and to take some of that technology development we're working on and looking at how do we now move that into fielded systems. And so I would definitely ask for your support for that 25 budget request.
Absolutely. Well, next generation air dominance is going to be key. Secretary Garrett, if you can reflect, too, on where the Navy is with NGAD and the FY25 budget request coming over with a significant reduction, about $1.8 billion. So give us the idea about why the slowing of the steps forward with that and where the Navy sees this. And Rear Admiral Donnelly, I'd love to get your perspective on that, too.
So thank you, Chairman, for the question. This is actually my first question on
good.
this
Yep.
side. I'm very, very excited for the opportunity. But there's actually isn't a lot of daylight between the Navy and the Air Force in terms of the cooperative development we're seeing across the services. Just mark this date, right? This is we're pathfinding for a level of cooperation between the departments that I think, to be honest, quite refreshing. And just like Honorable Hunter said, we have a lot of co-development, not necessarily co-development, but we're leveraging off of each other. We're working on different parts of the problem and working together in a way that's, it's well, honestly, just a little bit surprising. Yeah. Now, there are going to be different jets, right? We're going to do something, we're going to do this trick, right? We're going to take off from an aircraft carrier, we're going to land on it again. So there's some structural elements of what it takes to do that. It's just going to be different. But a lot of the stuff on the inside is going to be highly leveraged. Another thing that they've started doing that we're teaming on, I'm particularly passionate about, is that to have the government in a better position to manage our business. Having a reference architecture, we can understand how to bring different capabilities into this jet over its life cycle is something I'm particularly interested in, looking forward to partner with the Air Force and going forward. Is there anything else you want to add on that, General Donnelly?
Thank you,
I did that too, Admiral
Donnelly. Chairman Whitman. As Ranking Member Norcross brought up, it's about capability. Yeah. And so Navy firmly sees that the sixth-generation capability that FAX will bring is extremely important to our future force structure and the capability we require in the next decade. I think Mr. Hunter laid it out very well, how we establish our understanding of the capability required based on threat assessments, the environment that we're going to operate in, and the architecture that will allow us to continue to develop towards that. It's been well stated here, the cooperation between the Navy and the Air Force, but what I would also bring up is our close cooperation with industry as we develop these possibilities here for the both services solutions. With regards to where the Navy is in the budget, there were some obviously very hard decisions to make in 25, and Navy is prioritizing current readiness, wholeness of capabilities, but we wholly understand that we have to continue to develop this future capability because of the importance it has for our force.
Very good. I think one of the aspects of this also with NGAD/NJAD is not just understanding what the future threat scenario would be and what the future countermeasures will be by our adversaries to try to overcome whatever technology we bring to the table, but also to look at enablers like CCA. I think CCA holds a lot of promise for the current aircraft in F-35. As we know, it's meant to be ancillary, not in place of. But give us your perspective, both Mr. Hunter, Mr. Garrett, and Rear Admiral Donnelly, about how you see CCA playing a role with NGAD and NJAD, because not a whole lot's been mentioned about that. We talk about the current scenario now and moving it to the left, getting it out there quickly. But as we advance that particular platform, give me your perspective on what it does to the capability of NGAD/NJAD.
Well, sir, our collaborative combat aircraft program is part of the NGAD family of systems, yes. So it's very much envisioned to be a complementary capability that helps NGAD perform its mission. Having said that, we anticipate, or we project, and we are budgeting towards fielding of collaborative combat aircraft on a faster time frame. So it is not just NGAD that they would be teaming with, also other systems, other Air Force systems, and also joint systems like the F-35.
Do you think what we learn by fielding CCA faster will provide more capability and capacity for NGAD?
Absolutely. It's leveraging that same architecture, that same industry-based partner. It allows us to exercise fielding of technology in a way that will definitely be supportive of us doing the same thing with NGAD.
Sure. Secretary Garrett, I know that Navy is going down that road too, maybe looking at CCA a little bit differently, but still in the realm of additional capabilities.
Certainly. I'd like to answer the question slightly differently and show how we are leaning into that as aggressively in the MQ-25. You know, this is a refueling jet.
Yeah.
Maybe we could do some other things later, but my message to industry right now is we need a refueling jet. And so staying clear and consistent on the requirements for that capability. But as we mature out that technology and get to the point where we can reliably take off and land on an aircraft carrier with an unmanned vehicle to do a, first of all, simple task, and then grow it over time and figure out how do we take advantage of CCA and then build other kinds of capabilities that the Air Wing of the future can leverage into. And Admiral Donnelly, I'd like you to pick it up from there.
Admiral Donnelly?
Yes, sir. The only thing I would add is that Air Wing of the Future, and as has been pointed out here by both General Moore and Mr. Hunter, the future fight is about the system, not just about an individual platform. And CCAs we see as a significant part about that. It provides great flexibility and opportunities to the tactical commander because of the risks that can be tolerated with the unmanned autonomous platform. One of the things I'd emphasize is that we are potentially on different journeys between the services because of where these will be based from. But this starts with a tri-service agreement, so there's significant cooperations between each of the services as we develop our approach to this. There's a shared approach to the tactics that we'll employ with these. And beyond interoperability, we're looking at interchangeability for the employment of these platforms. So I think we all recognize the values these bring to the future fight.
That's great. Yeah, it's I think pretty exciting to see potentially what they can bring to the table. Lieutenant General Gehring, I wanted to get your perspective because from the Marine Corps' perspective, there are actually two dimensions to CCAs. There's a CCA as an asset in the stand-in force to be an independent asset that can be launched and retrieved there across the Indo-Pacific. There's also using it as an enabler for the ARGMU and the F-35 Bravos that are based on ARGMU. So give us your perspective about how the Marine Corps sees the CCA, which is probably a little bit different perspective than the Air Force and the Navy.
Chairman, thanks for that question. Yeah, I mean, I think at the wave top, first of all, we're completely aligned with the Air Force and Navy with CCA, and we also have signed the tri-service vision.
Yeah.
So we think no matter what it looks like or what it ends up being, it's got to be complementary and interoperable, not only with our own force, principally our F-35 fleet, but certainly with the joint force, and that includes beyond 5th gen. So that's the approach we're taking. Right now we're experimenting with the XQ-58. We've conducted 2 flights to date. We have 3 more planned this year. The first 2 were focused more on electronic type warfare technologies. And then as we get into the remaining flights, now we're starting about putting it into the data link, and then from there for the capstone event, the 5th flight is actually paired up with an F-35. So we're still on the voyage of discovery there, but to your point, sir, as part of the ARG-MU, the crown jewel of what we do in campaigning, there's certainly a MU aspect that we want to explore and see what's in the art of possible there. But also to your point on being part of the stand-in force, we want to make sure that it's effective in what we need there. But we are fully committed to this. We think it's an absolute must to pair up with our F-35 fleet going forward, sir. So we're still learning.
Very good. Well, folks, thank you. Thanks so much. You all have, I think, exhausted all the aspects of tactical aircraft, both manned and unmanned. We appreciate your patience with us and giving us your perspective on what I believe is probably one of the most important paths forward for this nation in countering the threats that we see around the world. So I appreciate what you do. Anything that you need from us, please know that we are standing by. Again, our effort is to chart the path forward to make sure that we're successful in where we need to be. Congress has to be a partner with you in that, has to be a partner with the industry as much as sometimes we're kind of back and forth about, what has happened to this point. Our charge is to make sure that we have that clear path forward to make sure we achieve what we have to achieve to counter the threats that we see before us, and we cannot underestimate what that is or where they are going. So I am confident that we can surpass them, but it will be a tough job, and it's going to be a 24/7 commitment. And gentlemen, I know that you all have all of that in your hearts and minds going forward, and again, whatever you need from us, know that we're standing by. So with that, I don't think there are any other questions. With that, the hearing is adjourned.